Hi, thanks for reaching out. This is a corker of an issue that I've had over the years, is finding a randomized control trial. They're kind of rigorous and they're tough to find. Quasi-experimental design the same way. So I'm going to show you some ways of getting around that and maybe negotiating your way into a bigger search pool because tracking these down is kind of tricky. That's hard to say. Okay. So I put out the methodology here. Everything's de-identified. I put in a population. I put in the issue. So let's dig in. What I recommend is we could start out in databases or the advanced search of the library catalog. So let's start. I mean, the darling. Well, let me show you all the ones that you can consider. So I have a list of databases in the research guides under social work. And if you go to PhD and Master's Help, you can see all these databases are ones that I use often. And the bigger, the better. So PsycInfo, that's the darling of social work. But there's also, CINAHL is really great. But let's start with PsycInfo. And there's overlap between them all as well. When you go into any of these databases, you might have to farm around a little bit. Go to the advanced search. And so the first thing, before we address the population and the issue, let's look at our method and see what we can find. So first one, I'm going to do randomized controlled trial. Whoa, all of a sudden, it gave me randomized controlled trial or RCT or, randomized controlled trial. So we're looking for synonyms for it. And this one is terrible because everyone assumes that everyone is spelling it the same way, and they're not. So we might have to add a lot of synonyms. So, and we put them in quotes because we want those words to stick together in a string of text. Ooh, and there's the S versus the Z. Oof. So we can expand by adding synonyms. Or would we do, well, let's see what we find. So right now we're just looking for evidence of the methodology and what it's called. We're not looking for anything else. Whoa, 37,000. That's not bad. I want to see if anyone calls it anything else. Oh, RCTS. Because I think it was called like a controlled trial. Randomized controlled trials. Okay, this might have been pretty good. In PsycInfo, it's not reliable, but you can go under methodology too. And you can see, clinical trial. There's like different ways of maybe calling it. Okay, maybe we've got it. So that's one thing you can do to start out with before you put in any population. And then next one, so we know we've got 37,000. And we'll do this one second. We'll do that one next. But so we're looking at, so the problem with this one is there's two populations. So anyone who identifies as LGBTQ, LGBTQ+, et cetera, is often considered a population, and youth is often considered a population. And getting those two narrowed down, that might be a sticking point. But what we could do is find out. And case doesn't matter. But all of a sudden, when we start putting it in, there's like a whole bunch of synonyms for it. So let's put those in. And then let's try the age range. Youth. Well, let's see how many we get with just this. Okay, we'll go from 37,000 to 236. Oh, there's youth. Okay, so now we do youth. This search writes itself. Youth or adolescents or young people or teen or young adults. When somebody's doing a clinical trial, there isn't necessarily a canon for how an age group should be described or defined. Often what they'll do is they'll say youth, and then they'll go on to describe ages something to something. I don't often hear young people. but I've heard adolescents. Ooh, let me show, there's another trick too. We can take away the S from adolescence and do a star. That'll get adolescent or adolescents. Or teen. I don't know if we want young adult. That might be too old. Do you want children? Do you want children, kids? There's all these different, that's cool. Ljunggren must be from Sweden. I have no idea. So you see the issue that we have here. Every word has to tie to something that we find somewhere in the opening of the article, like the title and abstract. So let's see what we get. And don't be discouraged if it's 0. Hey, 65. That's not too bad. And for this 6110 class, you probably have to find something in the last 5 years. I hate narrowing down because it's just like, is it going to be too narrow? Oh, there's still 34. Well, that's not too bad. So approach it little by little, and then you can modify it as you go. But using synonyms or related terms is definitely the way to go when you're looking for something as focused as the RCT. Oh, but then we have to narrow it down to depression or trauma. Oh, here we go. So, throwing all my cards on the table. There's only 34. We could just read through the 34. Since RCTs and quasi-experimental are so rigorous, there's not a lot of them. But when we add trauma, how do you define trauma might be a sticking point with your instructor. Major depressive disorder. So again, you might have to move from one side to the other or include both of them. Yeah! I can't believe it. So the synonyms, related terms are your friend. Okay, so how would we do this? I mean, you could add trauma as another keyword line as well. But this is really in-depth, isn't it? PsycInfo is great for this because they do a lot of studies on individual people. So let's go and try, what's our other one that we were looking at? Quasi-experimental design. Let's see, what else do we have? Oh, they call it experimental or randomized controlled trial. Oh no, we just did an RCT. I got a bad feeling about this. Ooh. Yeah, we got nothing. So are there other names for quasi-experimental design? Are there other names for, let's take away this line. Oh, there's one. So can you back out and use supporting evidence? So I would say suicide attempts is evidence of depression, anxiety, or things like that. Can you negotiate as you go is something that you might have to do. Looks like these are really rare. And you could also, let's go back. You could also say, well, let's take away this line. Let's take away an age range and just say we're looking at people who identify. And then it looks like there's a couple more. So you might have to mess around with the deck of cards that you're dealing out there. If you can't find anything, ask, let's see. Oh, well, ask if experimental, quasi-experimental, ask if there's synonyms for that. But this is the way that I would go. Oh, that was a lot of words, wasn't it? So as you go, let me know how it works, and I'm happy to help you as you go. But this is the nitty-gritty of how I would go into it. You can also, if you don't have to be within the last 5 years, you might be able to go back and get a bigger body of things to work with. But try the different databases from that guide that I showed you initially, and let's see how it goes.